How would a Biden COVID tracing plan upend your rights? Frightening scenes playing out in New Zealand and in Europe may offer a glimpse. The American left and their media poodles have long held up New Zealand as the model for how to properly deal with a lot of things, including COVID. But anyone who loves freedom should take note, because the Kiwis have a terrifying new response to rising COVID case numbers. They're throwing people into quarantine camps.
If someone refuses in our facilities to be tested, they have to keep staying. So they won't be able to leave after 14 days. They have to stay on for another 14 days. So it's a pretty good incentive. You either get your tests done and make sure you're cleared, or we will keep you in a facility longer. So I think most people will look at that and say, I'll take the test.
No leaving the camp until you're negative. The left's other COVID role model, the EU, is taking equally drastic measures. They're requiring government officials to use thermal imaging cameras designed by a Chinese company, the same one that provides surveillance equipment to the concentration camps that they call re-education camps for the Uyghur Muslims. Joining me now is Victor Davis Hanson, Hoover Institution Senior Fellow. Victor, are these the type of scenarios we're going to be facing under a Biden administration?
Yeah, it's frightening. I mean, here the virus started in China, it was spread from China, and now China is offering the West the methodology and technology of fascism to supposedly cure what they started.
I am now directing medical officers of health that all cases, confirmed cases, are to be managed in a quarantine facility. Close family members who might be at risk as appropriate. A reminder, these facilities have been set up specifically and have excellent processes and resources in place to look after people with COVID-19.
Then they're coming for your kids, folks. And I have a very bad feeling that a lot of you are going to find this out the hard way. They will knock on your door and say, we suspect that you haven't been tested, therefore we're going to take your kids from you now. And the police will take them away. And you'll be standing there slack-jawed, wide-eyed, trying to figure out, what do I do now? Well, it's too late, folks, because they've taken your kids. And it gets back to your point, save your family, save the country. The two are the same. And they will take your children.
The member for Lanark, Frontenac, Kingston.
Thank you, Speaker. My question is to the Premier. In my supplemental question yesterday, I asked this government if the people of Ontario should prepare for internment camps. In September, the federal government posted a call for expressions of interest for contractors to supply, provide, and manage quarantine isolation camps throughout every province and every territory in Canada. These quarantine isolation camps, however, are not limited to people with COVID, but provide a wide latitude for many people to be detained. Surely this government is aware of the intentions to build these isolation camps from coast to coast. And my question to the Premier is, how many of these camps will be built, and how many people does this government expect to detain?
Question. Government House Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It is very true that when people leave the country and when they come back in, that the province is suggesting, and the federal government, in cooperation with the federal government, we are suggesting that people isolate themselves. That has been a practice that has been very successful, not only here in the province of Ontario, but across Canada. And we will, of course, be redoubling our efforts to make sure that the people of the province of Ontario remain safe, Mr. Speaker. So if the member is referring to the fact that that one of the public health policies is that when you return from a jurisdiction outside of the province of Ontario or from another country, that you isolate yourself for 2 weeks, I would suggest that has been a good policy that has been working. In fact, this House has been doing the same thing since we came back. We are working in cohorts to make sure that the Legislative Assembly can continue to operate. That's why we have two separate cohorts, Mr. Speaker.
Response.
In the cooperation of the official opposition, that is why all members of the Independents have been excluded from that cohort, because we want them to be able to participate in debate. So we'll continue to do everything in our power to make sure that this House continues, but that the people of the province of Ontario and Canada are kept safe.
Supplementary question.
Again, back to the Premier. Here's the RFP, and in the RFP it uses clear language to express that these camps can be used for a broad spectrum of people, not limited to travelers. Indeed, it doesn't even mention international travelers. It's just a broad latitude of people. And I'll send over the copy of the RFP after. So your government must be in negotiations and aware of these plans to potentially detain and isolate citizens and residents of our country and our province. So, Speaker, to the Premier, where will these camps be built? How many people will be detained? And for what reasons? For what reasons can people be kept in these isolation camps? And I'd like to have the Premier assure the people of Ontario.
Member, take a seat. The next question.
Canada has also ordered a riot control agent with the first order at 36,000 capsules. They note that the riot control agent is required for training purposes only. I'm not sure if I believe that, though. They say, to be delivered to Canadian forces by March 31st, 2021. Even worse, though, they're concentration camps that we noted that was outed by that whistleblower. A Canadian politician leaked the new COVID lockdown plan. I'm sure most of you have already went over that, but a Canadian politician in the loop of the COVID planning, they've been told of a plan for a new response to an international economic collapse involving a federal government offer to eliminate all personal debts, that's including mortgages, loans, credit cards, etc., funding by the IMF under the World Debt Reset Program. Now remember, we went over the Great Reset in a recent video, and if you haven't watched that one yet, you might want to, because that's coming. Okay, so the horrific scenario comes from a Liberal Party of Canada, LPC, whistleblower from the party's Strategic Planning Committee, which is under the control of Canada's Office of Prime Minister, PMO. He says the second wave will be hyped up with testing around the end of November. Remember, though, outing their plans to the public might make them delay their plans. So the months and all that are being referenced aren't set in stone now that we are outing this to large groups or to the public. Either way, though, they're eventually going to find a way to make this happen. Okay, so the leaked report says phase and secondary lockdown restrictions on a rolling basis, starting with major metropolitan areas first and expanding outward, expected by November 2020. Rush the construction of isolation facilities across every province and territory, expected by December 2020. Daily new cases of COVID-19 will surge beyond capacity of testing, including increases in COVID-related deaths following the same growth curves, expected by end of November 2020. Complete and total secondary lockdown, much stricter than the first and second rolling phase restrictions, expected by end of December 2020 or into early January 2021. Reform and expansion of the unemployment program to be transitioned into the Universal Basic Income Program. Projected COVID-19 mutation and or co-infection with secondary virus, referred to as COVID-21, leading to a third wave with much higher mortality rate and a higher rate of infection, expected by February 2021. Now, I hope the vaccine doesn't have a part of that, or play into that. Bringing on another wave and then blaming it on COVID, but it being from the vaccine itself. And I'm sure I'm going to get flagged for saying that now. But daily new cases of COVID-21 daily new cases of COVID-21 hospitalizations and COVID-19 and COVID-21 related deaths will exceed medical care facilities capacity. And remember that this is just what they are saying. It doesn't make this truth. Doesn't mean this will happen. I'm sure they'll push for it to happen, or they will use the media to portray that it's happening. Okay, so enhanced lockdown restrictions, referred to as third lockdown, will be implemented. So full travel restrictions will be imposed, including inter-province and intercity, and that's expected in 2021. Transitioning of individuals into the Universal Basic Income Program. Projected supply chain breakdowns, inventory shortages, large economic instability, that's expected in 2021. and the deployment of military personnel into major metropolitan areas, as well as all major roadways to establish travel checkpoints, restrict travel and movement. That's expected in 2021. In exchange, the individual would forfeit ownership of any and all property and assist and partake in the COVID-19 and COVID-21 vaccination schedule, which would allegedly allow individuals unrestricted travel and living, even under a full lockdown, through the use of photo ID referred to as Canada's Health Pass. Sounds like a New World Order if I've ever heard of one. Everything mentioned in this are all things we are watching for the New World Order. All of this that we went over, including the Great Reset and the Build Back Better, etc., is coming to America also. So prepare while you can. Now, just like when I said it before the pandemic or plandemic, one of the things that we prepare for ahead of time is the possibility of large groups of people panic buying. If we have everything we need, we do not have to go into the grocery stores, etc., or as little as possible. And then items also do not run out on us. Okay, so a good reason to prep, bypass the panic buying of others. But anyways, there is a real possibility of much stricter lockdowns that are coming. Have everything you need just in case. And what if the first lockdowns were just tests and what's coming is much worse? I'd want to be prepared for that, wouldn't you?
Common Pass is a platform that lets people safely and securely collect their health information, whether it is a negative COVID test result or eventually a record of a COVID vaccination, manage that information, control it themselves, and then be able to let that information be used to demonstrate that they have had a negative test or they have been vaccinated.
Eventually, what we'll have to have is certificates of who's a recovered person, who's a vaccinated person. So eventually there will be this digital immunity proof.
So they can get on an airplane or travel to another country.
Okay, there is no sound for a minute while I share a few screenshots, but the sound will be back on momentarily. Just take a quick look at these screenshots that I've had over time as this has been going on, and screenshot them so you have them. If you want to see daily reports, I have both public and Patreon only reports on my Patreon, which is linked below. A big thank you to those supporting me there. And I've got a lot of great content coming soon. Now, I do everything from science to political, so there's a little bit of something for everyone. So a big thanks again.